And Oklahoma is a unique space in terms of the number of African American towns that were established. Some suggest upwards of 50 African American towns between 1924 and 1928. Reverend S.S. Jones was going around documenting this sort of self-determined, vibrant African American communities. You see the African American educators, doctors, lawyers, landowners, oil barons. And I think that's what's so remarkable about this footage. To think that individuals, how many years out of slavery, are now owning oil wells that are producing 2,000 barrels a day. Is that not the ultimate American dream? Is that not the ultimate American story?
Former slaves.
It flies in the face of what I think some people consider part of African American history and culture. And I think that that was one of the things that Oklahoma and what S.S. Jones is really kind of showing is that African American history and culture is not a monolith. And in a way, it became kind of like a marketing tool to encourage individuals to migrate, to move there, that this is a place where you can live, you can thrive, and peacefully reside. There were still palpable racial tensions. There are lynchings, there's Jim Crow, segregation, there's all of these things, and you still have an African American community, or many communities, that really speak to the fortitude and resilience of Black people in this country.
We all hear or have heard about places like Black Wall Street, which was a nickname. They also called it Little Africa. It was a nickname for Greenwood, Oklahoma, which was one of the most prosperous townships in the entire United States back in the 20s. Now, some people would say it was one of the most, or it was the most prosperous Black townships, which is true. It had a number of millionaires residing in this small Black town back at a time when millionaires, period, of any race were few and far between. But what most people do not know is that even in the one state of Oklahoma, there were over 70 towns. Rosewood gets a lot of attention, but there were over 70 all-Black towns that were created, built from the ground up, governed and ran, and very successful by recently freed slaves. See, the way history is taught in America, its only intent, or primary intent, seems to be to promote white supremacy. I'm sorry, that is a fact. How else would you explain why some of the things I'm about to show you are not common knowledge? Because it's a part of American history. It's not even Black history. It's that too, but it's also American history. But yet there's a concerted effort to cause you to not know the truth, and to therefore be susceptible to believing a lot of the false narratives that falsely stereotype Black Americans in a negative light. Because you haven't been told the truth and you don't know the truth. Now, out of these 70 Black towns, there are about 13 that are still surviving today. And they're still Black. And they're still thriving. For different reasons, they may not be thriving as much as they were before, because one thing that integration has done is given Blacks more options. And a lot of Blacks have chosen to leave and to go into more segregated areas. But we still have these Black towns. And some of them were comparable to Greenwood or the Black Wall Street. And I'm going to show you that. See, there are a lot of negative narratives and stereotypes out there, and many of them are postulated by Black Americans themselves, particularly Black Americans who live in very dysfunctional communities. And that's one thing that I never understood, and that I really never got, and still don't get, is how people can think. They can formulate their worldview based upon a macro view, They're myopic. They can only see what's right in front of them or in their immediate environment, but yet they formulate a worldview based upon that. They live in a dysfunctional black community, and you will hear black people themselves, and they're all over YouTube, talking about the dysfunction of the dysfunction of the black community. Now, in their mind, they're not talking about the black community they live in, which most often is what we would classify as a ghetto community. They're not talking about that. They're talking about the larger black community, which I say doesn't exist because they're calling the entire black American race a community. You clearly do not know what the word community means when you make references to the black community and you're talking about the entire black race. And I don't care if the majority of black Americans at some point will refer to the black race as a community. You're wrong, all of you. You're just intellectually wrong. You know, a race does not a community make, no matter how many people say it, no matter how prominent they are, no matter who they are, no matter how often they say it. And it's important to understand this, because what happens is, this thinking is to the detriment of the black American race. Because when you look at the race as a community, invariably, even black people take the lowest common denominator and assign that and those attributes to the entire race. You take the most dysfunctional of black communities and you assign those dysfunctional attributes and qualities to the entire race. When many, in fact the majority of black Americans, have absolutely nothing in common with that dysfunction or with those dysfunctional communities. The thriving and prominent black communities that really are communities, and they share commonalities, not only geographic region, they live in the same town or area or neighborhood or community, but they also share ideologies, characteristics, character, goals, everything else. But they have nothing whatsoever to do with a broken down, impoverished, gang-ridden, drug-infested, dysfunctional, predominantly single-parent household, urban, predominantly welfare recipient community that just happens to be black. You are your own community. Now, I'm not here to disrespect or downgrade those who live in those communities, even if you are part of the dysfunction. And many of you are a part of the dysfunction. You are. See, if you are dysfunctional, if your immediate family is dysfunctional, and if you have a community that consists of a bunch of dysfunctional people and dysfunctional families, you absolutely are part of the dysfunction, but there's hope for you. And let me tell you how it starts and where it starts. It starts with you coming out of denial. Coming out of denial and acknowledging the fact that, yes, I am dysfunctional. You need to be like a drug addict going through a 12-step program or an alcoholic. And the first step in the 12 steps of an alcoholic rehabilitation or drug rehab program is to admit to your dysfunction. I'm going to show you functional communities that are not ghettos, that are not crime-ridden, that are not just wallowing in poverty and misery and ignorance and lack of education. I'll say it again. There were dozens. Now, I mentioned that there were over 70 just in Oklahoma. They were in Florida. They were in all over the United States. Very prominent, thriving, and functional black communities. Now, I'm not even saying predominantly black. I made a video showing that the most predominantly black community in the entire Southern California region was View Park, Windsor Hills, which today has a median income of over $100,000 per year, which is far more than most communities of any race in the entire United States, and it is the most predominantly black community in the entire Southern California region. But by being predominantly black, it's only about 87% black. But when I talk about the black communities from back in the recently, one generation from slavery, less than a generation from slavery, back in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and some of them are still thriving today. They were not predominantly black, but totally black, exclusively black. If there were any white people around at all, they were so few as to not even be able to register when you start looking at percentages. Less than 1%. Black ran, black governed, black ruled, and they had any and everything any other town would have. Electricity, water system, transportation, barbershops, hospitals, libraries, law offices, anything you would need in a town for it to function. Anything. You had your craftsmen, you had your technicians, you had your construction companies, you had anything any other town would have. And black people who had been recently living slaves, ex-slaves, built this. Now, I'm a man of truth and honesty, and I deal with facts. I don't deal with emotion, because facts do not care about your emotion or how the facts make you feel. Now, a lot of us as black Americans, we are intellectually dishonest, and we hate any type of criticism, no matter how constructive that criticism might be. Oh, we shout and cheer when we are praised, or we hear something positive about ourselves. But you mention anything negative, we want to fight. We want to deny. We want to blame someone else. This is a positive video, but because I am who I am, I'm going to speak the truth. And not everything is always positive. Because how can you do better if you are living in denial? And like I said, no matter what we are talking about, when we talk about self-improvement, one of the first things, in fact, the first thing a person needs to do, whether you're talking about getting off of drugs, alcohol, or just becoming a better person, becoming more intelligent, becoming more successful, or having a better home life or family life or relationship with your wife or children or husband or anyone, the very first thing you must do is acknowledge your shortcomings, your weaknesses, and that improvement is in order. Now we're going to take a look at another town in Florida, another black town that stands today. In fact, they say it is the oldest black town in America. It is Eatonville. Let's take a look at it.
The town of Eatonville, Florida serves as a monument to the end of slavery and the preservation of African American history. It's a place like no other. 6 miles outside of Orlando, Florida, lies a hidden jewel known as Eatonville, a place filled with a history of courage, progress, and the spirit of a people who were determined to make a better life for themselves, while inspiring hope for the future.
Eatonville was founded by Joe Clark, who bought land from Josiah Eaton, who was willing to sell land to Joe Clark, a black man who had money to buy it.
22 acres of land was sold and donated to Joe Clark and others who took that land and decided to incorporate and build their own community. Historian Nwana Theory says finding a safe place to live after the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 wasn't easy. Escaping the plague of racism was key as the creation of race colonies grew.
A significant number of thinking black people said, this is not going to work. If we can't live in security then with whites, then we need to move on out and found communities where we can live.
On August 15, 1887, Eatonville became a reality, proudly called the town that freedom built.
What makes it so special is we're self-governed. When we talk about being the oldest black municipality.
The town was built on the principles of education, family, community, and religion. Core values that stand to this day.
St. Lawrence African Methodist Episcopal Church is a cornerstone in the community of Eatonville. This is the oldest church in the United States of America from a black perspective.
The church was founded in 1881. That's 6 years before the town of Eatonville, a location where founders met to discuss the future of their new town.
There's no ville like Eatonville, and that's true because we are unique in our own way. We feel that we set a precedent for other black communities.
You can see here that, for example, even the water pump in the back of it.
Nathiri believes it's important to preserve the past. She works with others to restore the town's most legendary buildings, like the Thomas House.
Its last incarnation was as a private home. It was at one time the church. It was at one time a library. It was at one time a gambling hall. This building has had at least 4 lives.
Eatonville native and author Zora Neale Hurston, best known for her book Their Eyes Were Watching God, brought attention to the town, along with a yearly arts festival held in her honor.
Zora Neale Hurston was a maverick who recognized the beauty of her people.
Whether it's the paintings that line St. Lawrence Church or the murals and paved roads along Kennedy Boulevard, it's all proof that Eatonville has come a long way, along with a legacy of hope, a legacy that will never be forgotten.
Eatonville, we're going to keep on keeping on.
It's a part of the American saga. It incorporates so much of what is quintessentially American.
The town of Eatonville is planning to celebrate their 125th anniversary in 2012. Reporting in Eatonville, Florida, I'm Chandrea Thomas.
Thank you, Chandrea. You know, I just may go to Eatonville also. I just got back from a international traveling that I was doing. Went to a few places. And next time I do this, which may be in just a few months, this little town might be on my list. I'm just curious. In fact, I don't know. I'll check out the real estate, the land that's available, and I may decide to do something. I don't know. But we need to share these types of stories because the ignorance that permeates this country, the United States, the world actually, when it comes to Black Americans is appalling. The ignorance is appalling, the lack of knowledge, the presumptions that people make. And for whatever reason, people choose to make the most negative presumptions, never rooted in fact or truth, just in feelings and opinions that are not based on any facts or any truth.